veterans and icons for the session of Future of Media and Entertainment. And they'll be basically scoping the opportunities for startups to innovate and disrupt in this field. Most of you have already got their profiles, which we have sent it to you, what to say, the emailers and everything during the campaign. But quickly, Biren is the country head for Technicolor in India. It's the world's largest leader in animation, gaming, and VFX. And Biren has kind of grown it from a 600 people organization to close to 6,000 people in India. And that too at a time when no one could believe that you would get creative artists, creators in India. So kudos to him. Uh, and, and, and the company itself has got about 8 Emmy Awards, 4 Academy Awards, and
Now it says.
prestigious Cannes Lions Gold, and BAFTA Awards.
Not found, it says.
So
I will look at it,
Biren is
then I
also
will
now
update you.
helping a lot of startups grow in the ecosystem. And that's where his interest for today's session comes. He loves art, he loves music, and more than anything, he loves his wines and spirits. So that will be a topic in itself. He's very, very keen to understand what's the new normal and daily life be both at work and at So today I'll start off with you. Over to you. You want to share a presentation and give us your opening thoughts, and then I come to you, Saurabh.
Thank you. My ability to share my screen has been disabled, but if you can put it on, I'll get back there. Hi everyone, I'm just getting started, so we will just let me share my screen if I can get there. Okay.
Yeah, you can share. Yeah.
Okay. Is that good? Can everyone see what I'm? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. I would have loved to have known who I'm speaking to in terms of your profile, but I'll try and keep this general, and then you can come back to me in the conversation that we'll have. I'll try and breeze through the opening thoughts that I had for you. I put down some of my roles there on that slide that tells you that I am beginning to mentor people that want to come into our industry, specifically in the Northeast, because that's an STPI charter from the Ministry of Electronics and IT in Delhi. I'm the vice chair for the National CII Entertainment Committee this year. We made great progress in a little association that's not so little anymore in Bangalore for the creative industries called ABI, and we, I think, have drawn down about 30 crores of funding for small and medium-sized industries over the last 8 years that I've been helping to lead it. And then there's this Technicolor India role, which is a breeze because we have a small, cozy team that, you know, is a few thousands of people. And what I want to do today is to just tell you who am I? I mean, I'm a business architect, and I think from that point of view, if you need any help with architecting your plans, I'm the guy to bounce it by. I take no responsibility for what happens with my advice. I have limitations on being a spokesperson and what I say in terms of Technicolor in my company. So I'm saying this as an industry professional to you today. Hopefully you'll take away a few good things from this presentation. Here's a scattering or a smattering of an image, few images. The left-hand top talks about all the movies we do. We do about 15 to 18 movies a year. The last two, James Bond, Pirates of the Caribbean, last two, Harry Potter's, last two, many, many things. I say two all the time because that shows that people come back to us for the sequels. And we've done some that are more unusual than others. The Lion King was unusual because of the fact that it used game engine technology and is reinventing production. On the right-hand top is a fantastic combination of different genres of games that we work on, both art and animation, and now we're developing some levels as well. And I think that's something that is of huge interest to the emerging community of media and entertainment for everything that might become interactive in the future. And on the right hand at the bottom, there is more that Saurav can talk to than I can. But we produce 600 to 800 commercials for the world leaders. And this is, I think, a few of the logos of the companies that we worked with in the last year, in 2019, I think. So that's a little bit of a background of where I get my knowledge and information from. We work with the best and they inform and educate us. So I think that whatever we talk about really is going to be creativity, talent, and technology. And I think if you can achieve that balance in whatever you're creating in media and entertainment, then you're absolutely on the right track. I'm hoping today that I will be able to see special people and converse with special people and not people like myself. Hopefully every one of you that are in the Thai community are risk takers more than I am. And I believe that everything that we are doing today will be reshaped through innovation, which means that you probably are a bunch of revolutionaries, people with crazy wild spirits. All business people today who are individual workers, entrepreneurs, they call themselves entrepreneurs. But I've heard of a nanny who says, I'm a child care entrepreneur, right? I mean, I don't understand that. It's like saying that all tourists are explorers. And that's absolutely not true, because a tourist is a guy who goes, like me, and explores a few cities in the lap of luxury. And explorers are people that have, and this may not be the perfect example, but explorers are people that have gone where they don't know where they're going and they find India or the United States today. And therefore, I think the language, hopefully, that we're going to have in this conversation is not going to be driven by what makes me money and what will be the safe bet for me to start, but where can we be nervous enough to risk everything and go out and do something really crazy. So for me, an entrepreneur is a person that I would like to call crazy. I've done that twice in my life. After the first quarter of this year, in the month of May, NASSCOM did a survey, and the survey just says that everything is really going quite terribly, and it's no surprise that many, many startups are currently in decline. Hopefully, they'll see themselves to the other side. Some of them won't, and therefore that makes it a more dangerous and treacherous market. For those of you who don't know these numbers, I suggest you don't read them. It's a waste of your time. It's going to change quite a lot this year. But this market has grown in India by between 10 and 12% year on year for the last 15 years. I've been in the industry 20 years for a short part of my career, and that's what it is. And definitely whatever happens, the next 3 to 5 years will see a north of 10%. So there is headroom for everyone. Businesses that you think are great businesses, people think that India is a place for thousands of movies, and well, hundreds is definitely correct. But you will see that the film entertainment business is not that big of the total pie. It's like 10%. And some of you might be surprised to know that print has even higher revenues than film entertainment, even before all the theaters closed down. So you need to understand where you're going in and where the trends are. A few last comments. I think we're going to see that there are areas in which there is massive growth. So everything that is driven by algorithms and coding and interactivity and artificial intelligence, etc., is going to be just jumping ahead. And I think the one industry that is worth checking out, no matter which industry you're working in, is what's been going on with online gaming in India, that is going to be doubling its size every couple of years. One of the things that I've always recommended to people is what I've been seeing movie makers do. Why is it that a Steven Spielberg can make a movie on a world war, and then he can make something on a concentration camp and the Holocaust, and then he can do something in a completely different action genre? Is because I think in the selection of a theme, he and people like him and people like yourself who are wanting to create something new, build a story of your own, need to first of all have this ability to have very, very divergent thoughts, and then eliminate them, throw them out, and really filter them down into this funnel that is the convergent thinking process. And it's not easy for us to be in both of those spaces successfully, which is why you work with partners and co-founders and people that round you off, like we saw in the very beginning of that. I want to make a quick comment about Indian intellectual property. We've been trying in animation to see what would become the Mickey Mouse of India for the last 20, 30 years. And I think what we found is that we're still in the early stage of that journey. There have been a few wins in the last few years, but nothing very significant. And when I sit back and I'm a service provider working mostly for Hollywood in the safe comfort of making sure that someone pays us some money and we do the blue collar stuff, I just wanted to point out that look what's happening worldwide. Indian themes like Meera the Royal Detective are now just absolutely burning the charts everywhere. We happen to have worked on that for our client, Walt Disney, for whom we also produce Mickey Mouse quite regularly for the last many years, and many other shows. And the point here is, just on the content side of the business, there must be ways by which we can take stories and themes that are becoming more universal that we can tell in the same way that the West is doing. So quick comment, don't look at the left side. Didn't have a picture to slap in there. But the domestic market is huge, right? If you're looking from a content production point of view, especially with the onslaught of the OTT channels, last year there was 1,600 hours of original OTT content, 1,800 films, and 200,000 hours of entertainment TV only. I'm not talking about all the fabulous TV that you see from Republic TV and others, right? I've spoken about gaming already, and I'm not going to spend much time on that. I just wanted to go ahead and tell you that one of the things that maybe we'll be asking Saurabh a little bit more about is how do we draw the insights for the startups and for the businesses that you're in? I mean, his background in advertising, which is probably one of the most organized and process-driven forms of content creation, they look at consumers for brands, they figure out what those insights are, and they figure out then what they should really be making that is purpose-built from the point of view of the audience. And I think we don't understand the audiences that well here, and I'm hoping that each of you in your projects have spent the time to figure out whether you're a B2B, then what your enterprise insights are or what your consumer insights are. I am worried about recovery, what will happen after we recover from COVID-19. I think we're in a fantastic space in the last 4 months. I don't mean that in a celebratory way. I just mean that the speed and the quality, the cost control that all businesses worldwide and all industries have come out with in COVID-19 has shown that the business world is in its most efficient wartime mindset. And the way we've crisis managed, scenario planned, and tuned our reflexes to things that are happening is absolutely amazing. And what can happen, and the danger of what can happen is that when we come out of this year, next year, whenever, is that the inertia will set in again. And God forbid, I hope that we do not want to return to the operating style of what happened before C-19. So I just thought I'll have those few opening comments and leave you with some thoughts about. But I think what we really are trying to do this afternoon, this evening, is to figure out that, where will we be able to create value by reinventing the core of the entertainment and the media business, right? So with those thoughts, I will stop sharing and stop talking. And I hope that that's kind of a curtain raiser of some of the things that have been bubbling up in my mind for our conversation this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Biren. That was really insightful. Folks, before I introduce Saurabh Verma, I'd like to kind of divide the two people in a very nice way, which Biren had put the other day. So Biren kind of manages whatever is happening in front of the camera, inside the camera, and behind the camera. And now if you want to talk about Saurabh Verma, he's the czar of brand building. So the man has seen it all in the last 20 plus years. He interestingly left, I would say, a atrociously high-paying job in 2019 to start up. And he's one of those startups, who wants to kind of dominate the world. So he's looking at creating India's largest communication startup. He used to be the head of Publicis Communications South Asia. And under that, he just managed a couple of few companies like Leo Burnett India, Beehive, L&K Saatchi and Saatchi, Indigo Consulting, Sapient Digitas, Arc Worldwide, and Prodigious. If that's not enough, he managed, I think, close to 25,000 people, Saurabh?
17,000, yeah.
17,000 people, all of this together. So he's done a lot of consumer brand building, and a lot of the ads that you see or a lot of the content that you see is this man's creation. Before that, he was the chief security officer. He was also part of the prestigious jury in Cannes Lions. And something that I really uh, like about Saurabh is that he says that he loves to argue for coffee over. He loves to argue as more than having coffee in the morning. So we've got two argumentative gentlemen today. So I want all of you to kind of, uh, intellectually tax them today in the question. So please start. So meanwhile, Saurabh, your opening thoughts and comments on the entire IMC side.
So I think from my perspective, the fact that, in India, Publicis has a whole bunch of people, right, is actually the wrong business to be in, right? It's a completely new world that we live in, first to begin with. And, let's start with, why brands matter. And I've been, very privileged to have been part of, launching Amazon in India, to launching Geo in India, to launching Spotify in India, Twitter, Tinder, you name it, a bunch of really massive brands, been part of their journey. So it's been a real privilege, in the last few years to have experienced that. But, going back to brands and why they're fundamentally important. If you really think of it and you look at the data, right, it's actually quite astonishing. 84% of all the value of business is actually something which is intangible value, which is of which brand is actually a key component. In fact, 20% of the total market capitalization globally is something which is called brand value, right? Now, we are all in the times of COVID, and the reality is that strong brands grow 124%, in a 2-year period, as compared to 34%, with regards to not strong brands, right? They typically have 3x the sales volume as compared to weak brands. They command, from a quantitative perspective, a 13% price premium over weak brands, right? And especially, in times of recovery, right? Strong brands are 4 times more likely as weak brands to grow in the following 12 months, right? So you can imagine, how important it is to really build a strong brand, right? Now, the question really, if, especially with regards to startups, right, is how do you really build a brand to begin with, right? How do you really build a B2B brand? How do you build tech startups have a fantastic ability to do performance marketing. Where they really lack is actually brand building, which actually is a key component of actually building your own success. In fact, some of the softer things which are difficult to measure, right, are actually more important than the push campaigns which have started to happen. So, which is why, content at the heart of everything, building a purpose brand, right, which has true differentiation, right, is actually a key in today's day and age, right? So from a startup's perspective, frankly, it's a very, very tough world because, you start off typically with brand building, right, which is defining your identity, right, creating a brand world, right, a signature score and a logo, right, whatever it might be. Then you need to build a website, right, and then, you need some PR, right, and you need to do some performance marketing, and then you need some media buying, planning, you need some influencer marketing, you need some digital marketing. And frankly, it looks like a very complex world, right, with many possibilities, right? So my sense is that the only way to win in this let's say, lots of fragmentation is actually to seek integration, but at the same time deep specialization. So don't compromise on the specialization, but seek a deep specialization, right? um, So to me, that's really the key, from a startup's perspective, right? Try and look for partners who will be in your journey and will genuinely have skin in the game, right? So typically when you look at our world at the moment, right, and especially for the sake of startups, typically there are three kinds of models. There is a retainer model where you pay a certain sum of money every month, and then there is a commission model, right? And also there is something which is called a retainer model. So retainer, commission, and projects, these are three different kind of model. Projects is where you will come in, you'll do a piece of work, and you will get out, right? I actually think it's really time to reinvent the base, and especially from a startup's perspective, have a few new models, right? And one of them is of course an objective based model, where of course you will cover off a part of your partner's fee, but then link your performance with your success with their success, right? Which is what I call an objective based model. You might even want to explore, right, a model of a model where you're able to get the best in class partners, but it's really driven by a real skin in the game, and you might want to offer them equity, right, or sweat, right? Those are some of the possibilities, which you should start thinking about, right? So to me, the fundamental truth is, you have to win across channels, right? In today's day and age, you need a broad array of weapons to choose from, right, to build your brand, right? You have to be very considered in the selection of your partners, right? Especially in today's day and age, and each and every brand you build has to have a sense of application, right? And that's really the key to success, right? So for me, I'm actually looking forward to a great debate discussion. I'm looking forward to somebody challenging me in terms of having a point of view. And if you have any burning questions, please ask me, especially with regards to how can startups succeed and how can startups really build powerful brands. Naveen?
Thanks, Saurabh. I think in line with what you just said, I think there's one question which has immediately come up is, you know, uh, people want to ask and understand, what do you mean by performance marketing?
Um, so the great part about digital marketing is that you are able to create a performance campaign with multiple partners, whether it is Facebook or it's Google, right? And that performance can be across different levels. So you can say, listen, I want to have a when I create, let's assume you're Spotify and you have an app download to happen. So every time somebody clicks on a link which is yours, you pay only for the click of the link, right? So that's cost per click, right? So you pay for performance. You can even pay for cost of conversion, right? Which means if somebody buys my insurance policy, I will only then pay you the money, right? So today there is a possibility of actually creating deep performance marketing campaigns, right? And many of the larger, I would say, tech firms today have their own performance marketing teams or work with some really big performance marketing people right across the board. So if you really see, you take any big brand, right? Today, you take an Amazon, you take a Geo, they have their own performance marketing teams, right? In fact, even if you take some of the new age brands, the unicorns, which we look up to, right? Brands like, let's say, Dream 11 would have a whole big team of performance marketeer, and that's core to what they do. So they're continuously optimizing the content and the creative work, seeing which part of the creative work really works, gets you the best conversions, right? And there is a certain dollar attached with regards to the cost of conversion, right? So the cost per click is less, the cost per conversion is higher, and that changes depending on the category.
Okay, thank you. Biren, there are a couple of questions which had come in for you earlier, and that might also set the tone for the next few questions. Uh, there were a lot of questions, but I'm going to wrap it into one. What is the future of theatrical releases in India and worldwide? And do you see a big enough market for non-stream films in India? What's your thoughts on that?
Non-screen, did you say, or non-stream?
Non-mainstream films in India.
Non-mainstream. Okay. Okay. So let's start with a question that I also saw at the from Ratul on role of comics in the ecosystem. I'm not going to start from the caves where people drew because it'll take a longer time in this webinar.
Oh.
But the big opportunity right now is to be at the design end of the entertainment or media market. Because one of the things that we haven't done with the 1800 films that I talked about happened last year is that, and I'm sorry to say this to a lot of my friends in the film community, they're very poorly designed. Okay, the development of content, no matter whether you're making a game or you're making an animated movie or making anything else, has to happen through a process of development. And like any other development, and the startup ecosystem knows this better than others, you must factor that you will throw away 3 or 4 or 5 rough developments into the junk bin. And the cost of that has to actually be carried by the one that you go ahead with. So there has to be a portfolio approach. Have the ability for design, and it's happening in other industries, but in the media industry, our content is still designed in other parts of the world, and that's why formats come here. People take the easy way out of taking a Western format and adapting it. A Malayalam movie gets made into a Hindi movie. Why? Because the Malayalam movie did the development. But actually, original content, for it to resonate all over the world, requires original development. And of course, there are stories that are very similar to each other. Every crime series that we see is similar. So I think the opportunity, first of all, lies in this whole designing element of it. The second, and therefore we need to go more from being in production to being development, pre-production, and production. Most of our forefathers, for 2 generations before us, built houses without architects. Okay. And I'm not going to get into this conversation as to why you need an architect, but basically, architecture is fundamental if you want to scale something. And if you are looking at the kind of thing that I said in the case of the various projects that I showed you on that screen, we are at a different end of the business because we are at an industrial scale, and the industrial scale is the antithesis of creative, because every creative needs boutique. So we are not one large company with 6,000 or 5,000 people in it. We are several small entities that do very bespoke stuff. And most of the media businesses that anyone attempts here, you will only be as strong as the weakest of these 5 things. You will only be as strong as the weakest of these 5 things. Creativity, technology that makes that really shine, production management. You've always heard that things don't happen on time in India, and of course they do not happen on time in India in many cases, but that's really project management, production management. Understanding money in the operations of all of that around it, and talent, right? Especially as you come into new sectors. I just want to give you a statistic that while I've been here for 11 years in this company, in the creative side of our business, which is one of the 3 businesses of Technicolor globally, 50% of the revenue that we had 11 years ago in the company came from businesses that no longer exist. So we may be very large, but in media, everybody's a startup and you're constantly starting up, right? And therefore, I think it's really important to understand. And by the way, we are about 3.5 times the total revenue that we were 11 years ago, which means that all of that incremental revenue has come from things that have happened through new tools, new technologies, new processes, new pipelines, etc., etc. And that's, I think, where the mindset needs to be, very clear. The next point that I wanted to really make is, what are the opportunities? I think you're looking today at opportunities where the media and entertainment talent and technology is spilling into other areas. I would like to ask Saurabh his opinion, because he's been making the conventional ad commercial for many, many years. And you saw that we do a lot of that. But that whole business is changing. People are going direct to brand. People are creating other ways of doing things. And I think it's becoming more experiential. So, how will augmented arrive? All the XR stuff is arriving into marketing in a very, very dramatic way. And I think we have the phenomenal ability in India. There is something in the fingers of most Indians that helps them to write code and do things that are really computer savvy. And I think the platforms like the Geo and others that are emerging will give many opportunities to people at different ends of how to be dancing on a stage that gets created for you. China has been the world leader in infrastructure. And your movie question, We had 3,000 screens or thereabouts in India 15 years ago. They had 3,000 screens in China 15 years ago. They have 65,000 screens in China now, and we have 5,000 in India. So where I think the new world is where with cloud and everything else, the infra will become more syndicated and give opportunities to entrepreneurs in order to be not to worry about first building a studio and then shooting it. In film, only Raj Kapoor built a studio. Ranbir has never thought of making four walls and going and acting within the studio for himself, right? So I'll pause there. As far as the non-mainstream films are concerned, they're already happening. You're seeing that the streaming world is going to create a whole new genre of content and projects that are going to come out. And if you look at even the conventional TV, besides the news, the only segment that really grew in COVID-19 in English, for example, was movies. Okay, so the movies are going to get bigger and bigger. The tentpole projects are still going to happen, and the Disney's, Warner's, Universal, Sony, etc., will be creating larger and bigger projects, which is good news for people like us because there's more graphics input in that. But there will be a whole new set of direct to streaming and other platforms that will actually come out. And I think as far as the exhibition sector is concerned, the next 1.5, 2 years is really going to be very, very challenging. And with Disney having just put Mulan out without waiting for the screens to open in the US is a very big conversation in the last few days right now. We need to see what happens with the next few.
Excellent. Saurabh, are you there? Saurabh was experiencing some internet issues.
Navin, he has a lots of net issue.
Okay, so then I think, Biren, I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Logs back. No, what's your take on theatrical releases going forward?
See, the big movies need to be in the theater because the theater experience cannot be matched by any other experience, right? And you've seen that the innovation and technology, this is the big coming out party for a piece of art that you create. And that's, as I said, the budgets for that will get higher, even in India. You're seeing today that if I was to actually go by my definition of revolutionaries, people with free spirits, wild spirits, movie makers are just that, right? So they will make a Bahubali at a huge cost. It did reasonably well. They made one at a bigger cost and did even better. That's not, and I can tell you with some amount of certainty that their next movies will be even bigger. So that's the way to actually create. On the other hand, you're seeing that the hegemony of the actor-driven story, which has been the case for Indian cinema, it used to be the case for singers at one time as well in India, is slowly changing. I mean, it's rapidly changing because we are the only country in the world where the majority of the movie budget goes to an actor. We're the only country in the world where that happens. Movies in other parts of the world are story-driven, character-driven, director-driven. So you will know all of Spielberg's movies or Sir Ridley Scott's movies, or the people, but you will not remember all the actors that acted in that movie. Whereas it's quite the reverse here. If I asked you, most people on the call will be able to name me 15 movies of Amitabh Bachchan or 10 movies of Shah Rukh Khan, but they will not be able to tell me who directed them. So that is the change, right? Because you have to understand that in the filmmaking or storytelling world, the director is the captain of the ship. Not so here. So I think you're seeing many changes coming in terms of leadership, who's steering the story and how it goes forward. I think we got Saurabh back.
Yeah. Hi, Saurabh. Sorry, we lost it in minutes. So Saurabh, we just asked about the future of cinematic releases and also the question of non-mainstream movies in India. And Biren gave us his opinion.
Yeah.
There are a few questions which are directed at you, Saurabh, and I'm going to be reading out one of them. 1 second, where is that question gone? So there's a question from Gary. He's asking, how do you see the entire B2B sales process changing with the absolute loss of high touch value in the foreseeable future? So how is B2B sales going to happen? You think advertising and Zoom is enough? Or I'm sure people want to go and see industrial products and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I think we've got to learn from B2C if you have to crack. See, ultimately it's about people, right? Or when you look at B2C or B2B, at the end of the day, you are talking to a human being, right? And there is a story that you need to communicate. I mean, if you see in today's day and age, and you imagine, let's say a high-end car purchase, how would that take place in today's day and age when you can't go and see necessarily a showroom? So what are the car showroom guys doing? They're basically creating virtual showrooms online, right? And look at the way we are today with each other on a Zoom platform and having a conversation, right? My sense is post-COVID, right, as the world starts to recover, you will have a new balance, right? The new balance will have many things which are still to do with touch, but there are many other things which will start to evolve where you don't need to be there physically present to make things happen, right? I actually think that even today, when you look at uh, many B2B opportunities, right, from a brand's perspective. I mean, ours is a B2B business, right? Because we don't go and talk to consumers directly, right? We talk to brands, right? And we take briefs from clients and we create magic, which requires us actually a lot of when you interact with each other. So ours is the B2B business, right? So if you really think of it, I think there has never been a better time to reinvent yourself post-COVID. I actually think it's an opportunity. So for me, it's not just only about the physical interaction. It's also about the quality of what you bring to the table, right? The sophistication you have in your storytelling, right? And those things will start to matter more and more as you move forward, right? Everything will become about video, right? I mean, even if you see, globally, right, everything is moving from static to video, right? So I think it'll be a combination of physical and video, which will all come together, and that's the new world we will all live in.
Okay. Next question is from Nancy Jane, and I'm going to throw it open to both of you. First to you, Saurabh, and then to Biren. Saurabh, she says that she's from First Cut. It's an online audition app which gets aspiring agencies on one platform. Now, the part of question that she's asking you, Saurabh, is how do I attract more talented casting directors on board? She's more asking from a branding perspective. And Biren, I think I'll come back to you after Saurabh answers on the very same question from more in terms of attracting the talent. So the platform question to you, Saurabh, and the talent to Biren.
Yeah, I think, to me, the answer is very simple. When anybody interacts with anything, there is a value exchange which happens, right? So, the value exchange has to be meaningful. I mean, what is it that you offer, right? Somebody on the platform, right? And you have to be clear about it. And then you have to tell your story. Maybe there is a problem with awareness, in which case you have to make sure that people understand, right, that you exist. Maybe there's a problem with consideration, in which case you have to communicate why your platform vis-a-vis some other platform is actually superior or differentiated, right? So to me, ultimately, there is a value exchange which happens, and the story around the value exchange has to be communicated clearly for any platform to succeed in today's day and age. I mean, today, the reality is, if your platform is a commodity platform, right, you are in trouble. Right today, I mean, this is and it's not just. I mean, everybody is reinventing everything. If you look at real estate, I mean, there are platforms which will get created which are to do with upgrades, right? They'll say, listen, I'm going to take on your inventory. You want to today. Everybody wants a bigger house. I'm going to take on a smaller house, right? And give you a bigger house as long as you interact from you interact from my platform. I mean, look at this company called Pristine today, right? Which is a healthcare company. They don't own any assets, right? They don't only own any hospitals, but they do 1,500 surgeries a month, right? And that's because they're absolutely differentiated, from picking you up from your home to getting you the best surgeons to making sure that your insurance gets delivered there is an incredible value exchange which happens, which is why more and more people are using them for elective surgeries, right? So I think the question is your platform differentiated first to begin with? Right. I mean, look at the influencer platforms. None of them are really today real time. Right. I mean, if you build a real time platform where I can see and load a campaign, from an influencer perspective within a couple of hours, why will it not work? It'll work. Right. Who has a control? Right. And why would somebody basically be part of that platform becomes a key. So I think the question is of a value proposition. The question is of communicating that story in a seamless manner and making sure that ultimately whoever you are addressing understands your proposition.
Okay. So, folks, people may not know this, but a couple of years ago, Biren was the first CEO to have actually signed up actors for 3 movies, and I'll allow him to tell that story very well. Most of you know that story, and then I'll come back to Nancy's question, Biren, of how do you create talent and directors on.
I'll just like start actually from the less sensational task of answering the question, and I'll come back to this story if it's relevant still. You see, the thing is that I think for anyone that is an entrepreneur, you need to be solving some problems, and you can either solve this problem because there's a demand for a lot of talent and they don't know how to find it, or there's a lot of talent that wants to go and look for it. So I think in the media and entertainment industry, if I was to take broadcasting, okay, let's take broadcasting, because for those of you who read numbers very quickly, it's 55% of the total media industry by revenue, and by employment, it is probably much, much higher than that, probably about 70% or more, 65 to 75%. Now, as difficult as this may sound, even though there are 1,800 films made, and let's say they're being made by about 1,400 people or 1,600 people, it is a relationship-driven business, and it is a relationship-driven business everywhere in the world. So the cinematographer knows the cameraman that he likes to work with, the cameraman knows the lightman he wants to work with, and so on and so forth. And they disband and band together depending on certain things, which could be producer-driven, which could be geography-driven, it could be even style of movie-driven. So the art direction for a particular kind of movie will require a particular kind of a person, and so on and so forth. And there are specialities. For example, Saurabh will know that in the advertising world, there are particular photographers. If they have to do a commercial for hair, then there are about 15 guys in Southeast Asia that they will actually go to, because that guy really has mastered that whole story. So back to this platform story. In the platform, you need a mass. You need to define that, look, if I can get, I don't know what your number is, 3,000, 5,000, 15,000, 20,000 people to be on this platform that can be used, and I'm going to charge X amount to the, that's really the value exchange story that we just heard from Saurabh. The person who's making movies or has projects wants to pay a certain amount of money because he can't find them otherwise. I'm not sure that's a problem, but if you think it is, then you've got a deal there. And there are other people who are saying, I'll be prepared to pay a fee, or I'll be prepared to pay a percentage of the booking that you get me on this platform. And this has not been something that we've seen even when there are large scale employments taking place in Canada, in our industry, in Canada, in UK, in the US, and so on and so forth. But you know what? If you've done your homework and you think that that's the way to go, that's fine. There is a little element of doubt in terms of qualification. The reason you go to people you know is because there are different levels at which people perform. If I was to take our industry, animation, 3D model is one part of the 14 processes that goes into every frame of making a movie. Now, a person who can be a 3D modeler can be at various different levels. Somebody has to create Godzilla, he has to be really, really adept at creating that model. Somebody has to create stones and rocks and background props, and he is a different kind of 3D modeler. So how do I know from this platform, and is it going to be efficient for me to be able to figure out how this happens? So there are many things the platform should do that could be pain points that you need to think through before offering the skill set at scale. And I think that is really where that might work out. So I think there's some filtration to be done in terms of what the model is, instead of just creating a technology platform like any other platform and thinking that, hey, I've built it, people are going to come and use it. So that's my one point there. As far as the business model is concerned, what Naveen is referring to, I mean, that story is quite different. But there, what we found is that, again, I come back to it, and I think we don't want to spend much time, because I'm hoping that with the new digital transformation of the industry, as I said, there'll be a more level playing field between storyteller, creator, actor, etc. But old days, where actors had a predominance of value, the model in the Indian film industry changed to making the actor himself a producer or a substantial long-term owner of the content besides getting his fee. And the studio model therefore became where the large studios cut a deal where they became financiers, and they became people who took care of marketing and distribution, while the production was really a shared upside between talent and what I would like to see is not what actors were signed 20 years ago or 15 years ago. I'd like to see a time when we could come together and make that deal with 3 directors or 3 storytellers. And I'd like to go back to Ratul and his question about a comic ecosystem. You see, every movie that is designed actually is a comic book. It's not released as a comic book, but it's a comic book. Saurabh, through his entire career, has seen storyboards that he's taken to his clients. Those are the comic books that actually told the story of the ad that had to be made, or the brand that had to be created, and so on and so forth. So that kind of illustration and storyboarding is really the architectural portion that we talked about. And by the way, the world's biggest franchises and the highest value paid in entertainment, and when people have bought Marvel and people have bought DC and people have bought, this is the holy grail. All of the big Japanese animated movies actually are a small part of the revenue, because those are iconic comic characters for many years. We even talked of Godzilla in passing earlier on, right? And you'll be surprised to know that an Indian audience in Tamil, in Assamese, in Bengali, in Punjabi, etc., they actually love a Japanese character. The number 1 character in India is Pokemon, and the number 2 is Shan Shan. So, of course, now we've got the Chota Beams and all emerging. But content, when you translate it and dub it, especially if it doesn't belong to any geography, has a new value all over again. And I think platforms are going to be more interested. The whole streaming story is a platform play. And I think the same is going to apply to many other parts of it. On the talent front, I would do a lot of research before finding and jumping into the talent platform model, because I'm not sure what pain point we want to serve. Except if you want to go into gaming and animation, where there is a emerging story, maybe there is a way to create some kind of a syndicated platform approach to it. Who knows?
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So, Saurabh, this question to you, I'm just going to roll it into one. So, as a startup, Saurabh, people are asking, how do they kind of manage their marketing and advertising budgets? Is there a lean formula that you can kind of suggest? Because everybody wants to build a brand and stuff, but in the beginning, I don't think everybody has great deep pockets. So what's your thoughts on that?
See, I think today the reality is, like I keep saying, you can be smart about the way you build the brand, right? You can create what we call acts. An act is a gesture and experience people want to be part of, which makes you part of popular culture very quickly, right? So I think what startups should really do is challenge their creative partners to create acts, right? That's the way to move forward. Some of the largest brands today spend an extraordinary amount of energy creating these acts. They're not necessarily, and acts don't necessarily live in one medium. They become part of popular culture very quickly, right? So if you see, for example, and I'm not telling you a startup story, but I'm telling you the story of how a very evolved brand, right, also has a startup kind of thinking, right? Because the story is in the way you do things rather than in the money you spend, right? So, for Bajaj Auto, right, which is a mega brand, it creates motorcycles across 50 countries. They've never succeeded in the commuter bike segment space. They do very well with sports category where they have Pulsar. So they wanted to win in the commuter bike segment where Hero is the predominant bike. And, they've had some 8-10 different launches and they've all failed in the last few years. And then they said, listen, how do we solve for the problem? And then we came up with a very novel concept, right? INS Vikrant, which was India's flagship navy, right, warship, was getting actually scrapped, right? And we said, listen, let's take up the entire INS Vikrant and actually make bikes from that, right? Now, without much advertising, right, just by becoming part of popular culture, they had a waiting list of 10,000 even before the bike got launched. Now, that is the power of an act, right? That's what an act can do for you, right? So you have to think about an act rather than an ad. An ad is a one-way communication. An act gets you inspired in a much larger narrative, right? So find a way to create an act, because that is much more valuable. Around that, you can create a content, you can create whatever it might be. One of the questions, people often ask me, where should I put my money? I think it depends on your own context. It depends on how much money you have. When you look at, typically the life cycle of a brand, if you're on Series A, chances are you should only focus on performance marketing, because you will not hit Series B if you do not have the success to show in Series A, right? That's the only thing you should be doing. Very quickly, you have to pivot from performance marketing to real brand building, right? If you look at, let's say, unicorn brand, look at Byju's. They bought, White Hat Junior last week, right? A few days back for 300 million the brand, right? Very, very quickly, right? They pivoted in that direction. So if you're really serious about India and about scale, right, depending on the context, you have to understand that the big numbers will only come when you are a mass brand and you connect with the heartstring of India, right? That's the only way to do it. You have to be part of the IPL circuit, right, for you to win. Now, it doesn't happen on day one. So my sense is focus on building your numbers first, right? And then add the other elements for you to win.
Start with acts and then go mainstream.
Yeah, no, I would say start with performance marketing first,
Okay.
right? And then you can create acts, but eventually the big game gets all played in mass media, right?
Got it.
Be smart about your money and about your own context.
Now, I'm going to throw open a question to both of you and ask for your opinions. And this is coming out in various forms. We don't have a formalized, funding network in India, like a VC, for the creative folks and the media and entertainment industry. It's either a game for the big people, or it's friends and family getting money, helping somebody launch. I do see Naveen Chandra in the audience today while he's trying to start something for real. He's a funder for the regional movies and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on organizing funding sector, especially in movie making or in content and creative side? It's hardly where we see people going and pitching to investors over here. What's your thoughts on that?
So let's go back 20 years. We managed to, this was when I was one of the first CII committees that we formed with everyone. Radio licensing was about to happen. A multiplex policy was about to come out. It was a 2-3 channel environment for the GECs. At that time, we managed to go to convince the banks, with a lot of help from the central government, to create movie making, to list movie making as an industry.
Okay.
That only happened it happened only after the turn of the century, right? So that's how recent our recognition is. Before that, it was informal sources of funding that primarily drove it. And I must say that the formality, and I'm not talking of advertising here, because advertising had the influence again of multinationals coming in and creating a lot of process, which again happened really in broadcasting, again with multinationals coming in, right? It's the Star Network and the Sonys and many others that came in, from time to time, that brought that created the processes that enabled scale. They also made the investments on their own. And it is no surprise to anyone that is talking money that in one of the largest deals done, which was the acquisition of Fox and Murdoch's entertainment assets by Disney, that a significant value of that, I would say somewhere in the 25-26% range, and this has been reported widely, is actually the value of Fox's India entity, right? You're seeing the same thing in the power of video right now. You've probably seen in the last 4 days that short form video through TikTok. They're looking at the acquisition of that entity by Microsoft. And again, just the India portion of the TikTok deal, from what I read in the newspapers this morning, I don't know the details, I haven't spoken to them yet, is worth 3 or 4 billion in that. So when you have a consumer play that has any scale, I think what we are seeing today is we're seeing that things that are driving consumer experience has the highest value. Within that deal again of the Star Networks in India, a large loss-making entity like Hotstar, which had the numbers and had the trajectory, was and has been proven now to be the perfect launch platform for Disney Plus, right? In a country where unusually Netflix is behind and Amazon is very far ahead because of the timing and when they came in. So I think the important takeaway here is, that we need to do things that have a certain scale. And I think the whole area of advertising, I'd like actually to get Saurav's view on that. How is advertising from its more conventional routines moved into challenging itself to be at the forefront of consumer experience, right? And Saurav's big startup now that he's looking at, he will have to become, while he was the czar of branding through the conventional tools of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, he will have to achieve the same success with very different pathways that actually help his clients to and he's talked about that through acts is one of them, but I'm sure there'll be other things that he will look at in the future that will come from the extended reality kind of tools and gamification tools. And I want to even ask the question of the group here and of each other, right? In a time when events are as challenged as they are, these acts that we call them, right? Because I'm going to have this conversation. So you cannot have acts anymore. Let's start with that. And he has to now, tell us what's going to replace taking a whole ship and doing a big show on that with something that, how does he bring that into Zoom, for example?
Yeah, I mean, if you see, there's a wonderful clip going around on IPL's launch campaign, right? And, we've typically always thought of content in a very mainstream manner. But if you see this whole, in today's day and age, right, this whole launch campaign for IPL, which is essentially a graph, a left-hand axis and a right-hand axis. I don't know how many people have seen it, right? It talks about how we basically, went into lockdown, right, felt a certain way, right? And the moment, alcohol got lifted, our spirits got raised, lockdown got extended, our spirits went down, and guess what? IPL comes in and see what happens, right? And it's a great piece of, work, which is not really necessarily a traditional television commercial, right? So I think you can create great content and storytelling, especially during the lockdown, number one, right? I think that's a distinct possibility. As far as funding is concerned, right, I think you have to pivot from what I call a services-based model to a more product-based model, where there is scale in the platform itself, right? So I think everybody is looking for a meaningful connect and experience a human being can have, a place where a problem gets solved, right? And of course, the ability of the leadership team to make a difference, right? Ultimately, right? Those I think are the critical variables which everybody is looking at. So from our perspective, we are very quickly moving. We are not going to be an advertising firm. We are going to be actually a technology and a platform company, because that's where our focus is, right? So we are trying to build, for example, a school platform where we can connect brands and schools together on a singular platform. We have an influencer platform. We have a B2B2C platform. We are not interested in building a website for LIC. We are interested in building a website for 5 lakh agents of LIC. We are not interested in building a social media presence for LIC. We're interested in building a social media presence for the 5 lakh agents of LIC, right? So to me, everything will become about platform and about scale and about genuinely solving problems, because that's where the real value will get created as you move forward, right? If you don't build platforms and you don't really reinvent your model, chances are you will die, right? A quick and violent death, right? So to me, from an advertising perspective, just so that you get a perspective on what's happened, our, globally, there are 4 or 5 large networks who pretty much own every single entity. They've acquired every single company over a period of time, right? And in India, the story basically was exactly the same, right? A lot of the global MNC brands came in, they put in the money, right? But things are changing very quickly, right? More and more, we have realized, especially in our business, that 95% of our business was actually local business. It was non-aligned. In fact, a lot of the global MNC brands in India are looking at the best partners, not necessarily a global alignment. So the shift is a huge, dramatic shift in today's day and age, right? They're looking for winning irrespective of where that win comes from, right? So I think it's no longer about process. It's more about the ability to adapt, the ability to create value. And every client, whether it is B2B or, is going to look at ultimately the ability for you to make a difference in their world. So I think if you do that, there is enough money available, right? As long as you can create value, right? It's all about that ultimately.
Just wanted to quickly add to Naveen's question. You said Naveen Chandra was talking about, he's a regional filmmaker, right? So there are two things I referred to in my slide earlier. You see that the problem with making big money on films is that the people in our economy, in our country, have made a film in order to get revenues from the film itself. But if you look at the big studios in the world, they are all consumer product companies. If it's Disney, it's Universal, it's Sony, they do not make a film. The film for them is the $150 million ad commercial to build a franchise. And that's what they do. So they're actually going to market as a consumer product company, which is why I had many things written on the slide, but I read out only one thing earlier, and I said consumer insights, right? If you really want to know what you want to invest in, don't look at a film after. I think Naveen maybe, I don't know him personally, but might be working with filmmakers to see if this film has legs, how do you choose it, does it have the right script, does it have the right cast, what kind of distribution will we get out of it, etc., etc. It is very myopic. Is this film going to be is it going to be a brand? Is it going to be something big? And I think, there is probably something to be learned from what brands have done that filmmakers have not done, which is to figure out that, why am I going to make this bigger than, larger than life? So today it happens the reverse way. If a Bahubali is famous, then somebody will take the rights for it, then go to Reliance, then make the game, then they'll do something else. It's a derivative, it's not a plan. Whereas in the plan for a film in Warner Brothers or in any of those places, there is a detailed plan for all of the windows. And I think that was referred to on the chat earlier when someone talked about how do you fund films, that there are these many windows that have always existed. So even for conventional large studio chains in India, they always knew that I'm going to get this much from music, this much from Hangama for its, its social story, the going back in time and all the other stuff it can happen online. And I'm going to get this much from international and so on and so forth. But that's still very myopic. We haven't had the big idea, first of all, of thinking of a slate. Because a movie is not about a one-trick pony, right? It's not a race where you can have one thing and win it. So what is the kind of portfolio? What is your insight into how you want to make it? What's the theme you want to go to? How can you be a house where you have a family of brands that are actually the movies and the stories that are coming out? And there is a lot of scope to do that. And I think that's really what is missing today. But financing has never really been a big stumbling block for people that wanted to go and create content, because everyone wants to make a movie. Every guy who sold his company in the tech world all over the world is actually got a story in his head, or wants to fund a story, or be part of a movie, or meet some of the big stars. So the conventional sources have to come in. And by the way, there are people like the world's largest VC companies that have invested into studios in India already. So you have an animation company in Mumbai that has got money from some of the KKRs and so on and so forth, and they're doing that with the same view that they will ride many horses. There's many different projects coming out at the same time. It's a portfolio play. One of them will win. As long as you can organize this on an industrial scale and make sure that you have your development, pre-production, production, you make sure that you have a vehicle to fund the concepts that you chucked away. I think there is a way to do this, and I think it's about timing, and maybe that timing is now, because you don't have to pay more money to the star than you pay something else. So if you go back in time and look at a movie, I'll call it out because it's true. There was a movie called Toonpur Ka Superhero, which is let's say for the sake of this discussion, I'm giving you a round number. It must have been a 40-50 crore movie. It was 60% animated and 40% live action, or 50-50 for the sake of this conversation.
What is the name of the movie? Sorry.
Toonpur Ka Superhero. Okay, it had Ajay Devgan and Kajol and their kids, and it was now the original budget for animation for that movie happened to be 2 or 3 crores out of the 40 crores. Whereas if you ask anyone through common sense in the world, they will tell you if a movie is 50% animated and 50% live action, the budget should be 80% animation and 20% live action. I'm not getting into the particular stars or the movie or whatever. I'm just saying common sense. Yeah. So when you start out with these premises which make no sense at all, the outcome is going to make no sense at all, because you're going to be doing something that is underfunded and so on and so forth. So I think it's not about getting money. It's about making sure you get money from people that want to be in that journey, stay in that course. Hollywood is completely financed, highly financed and highly lawyered, right, by everyone. And the studios are only platforms, by the way. Individual people come up with their stories, they go there, they cut their deals, they have their percentages, they have their rights, and it moves in that direction. We haven't been able to organize the ecosystem in that fashion here. And maybe with the new digital, the new media is likely to get organized quicker than the conventional movie making industry. Is just a question that I think we need to ask.
That gives me an idea of, Biren, that I think between you, Saurabh, and Tide, we should start out an entrepreneurship school for the movie making industry in India. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of takers for that. And especially in Bombay, there are millions and millions of people who have got those dreamy eyes, and we should do that. Now, slightly coming to a few technical questions which have come about. And I think between the both of you, you can answer this. How do you see AI shaping the future of media and entertainment? And the other question to you, Biren, is, will holographic replace 3D totally?
Technicolor currently has a business that has hundreds of, we make several $100 million today in this day and age, producing CDs and DVDs.
CDs and DVDs.
Yes, I saw your eyebrows going up.
Yeah.
Saw them going up, right? So when you talk of what, because there are many, many forms of content in many, many parts of the world, where, for example, a big game that needs to be released on a date everywhere, and it's too heavy to download. Certainly, Saurabh couldn't download it in Lonavala right now. Okay, they need to have a disk that goes in, and they can have that, because don't forget how heavy those files are, right? I mean, a game basically is something you play where you're creating a movie as you're playing it, because all the imagery is being rendered in real time and you're moving left, right, who knows where you will move at what time. And from that point of view, what I wanted to say is, old technologies don't replace the new technologies that quickly, right? Even today, while cutting the cord and cable TV has been moving out of the US for years now, you can still see that it's going to be there for a while that rebalances. In India, certainly, conventional TV will go on for a long time. In a country that where still a lot of black and white TVs are bought. I don't even know the number, but it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands a year. So back to your question, the replacement story is a guessing or a punting story. I think I'm more interested in what will the rate of adoption for something new be, and is that a market in itself? And I think that's the conversation that will excite the audience for today.
Sure.
That from a point of view of timing, okay, should I be in VR alone? From a point of view of timing, should I? And then the missing story is the business model. See, VR, as far as entertainment is concerned, is missing a business model. And also, I think the clunkiness of the device, the glasses are not yet there. Who wants to clip a phone above their nose all the time? I you can't convince a grandmother or a granddaughter to be comfortable in that. So there's lots of pieces there. But as I was alluding to in my earlier conversation, the tools and technologies of storytellers can be put to use in education and can be put to use in simulation of anything. If you want to create the COVID vaccine, you are actually using you're using simulation and animation and everything else to do that, because you need to do that in a more what should I say? Sorry, I got a phone call. I'm just putting it off. You need to make sure that those tools will work somewhere else, and as the business model and the device becomes suitable for entertainment, of course it will become huge out here. Because whatever we might say, I know Saurabh has all his life been able to convince Eskimos to buy refrigerators, etc. But there is nothing more powerful that tricks your mind as quickly as putting on a VR headset. I'm sure everyone on this call would probably have used a VR set. And no matter if you tell yourself 100 times before that this one where I'm climbing the Everest, I'm not really at the Everest, it's only a VR headset. But the moment you put it on, it doesn't take more than 5 seconds for you to completely forget all the tutoring that you did to yourself, and you'll be completely immersed in that story. So there are tools that are very powerful. On the holographic side, I think there are things. This holographic is not new. I mean, holographic imagery has been going on for quite a while. I don't think it's going to replace anything. It will be used, initially gimmickly and then later in other ways. I think the big thing where what we do will become more ubiquitous is really the area around 3D printing. And in certain segments of our business, which I think are more automated and automatable, definitely AI. So if you look at the software you use for animation between when I came into the industry 20 years ago and today, there are a lot of steps which were done individually by human hand that now you do one thing and then the fourth thing and then the ninth thing, and then the in-between steps happen automatically. So that will continue to happen. The software development around that will continue to happen in a very major way, right? But I think digital humans is the big one. Digital environments is massive, because I think people are just not going to have learned not to spend that money in, flying to 6 places to make a movie and 5 places to make an ad commercial. I think the whole digital set story is going to become huge. And automation in making all of that come together with game engine technology. It's all GPU based from CPU, with the Unities and the Unreals. They're making huge headway, including in the Bombay film industry, especially in the lockdown. They're just demoing that tremendously. So you'll find that change a lot. And there are opportunities along that. Not everyone has to do everything in that whole story. There are lots of things where pain points will occur as people move from one technology to the other. And I think, that school of entrepreneurship that you talked about can have a consultancy wing.
And Saurabh, what do you say AI is doing to your industry, especially in the content side and advertising side?
So I think AI is already front and central to a lot of what we are doing. So if you look at the whole concept of programmatic, right, which is a huge industry by itself, it's happening. So today you shoot up one piece of work, and then the AI will take over, cut the stuff depending on your temperature, location, right, geography, right, your current context, and create the content. The question really is, the lack of integrity around some of these platforms, which has become a huge debate in our world, right? As you might be aware of. I think it's also about the quality of the content, because ultimately, what human beings really want is great storytelling, which can connect with them, right? Now, some of it you can cut, right? Some of things which are basically, the nuts and the bolts, right? But everything else, right, requires still, I think, a lot of human intervention, even at the moment. So I think, this will be a continuous battle. I think we, from our world, have, I think, overdone a little bit on the AI and ML part, right? And I think it requires, I think, new processes, guidelines, right, to make sure that we don't cross some boundaries, which can actually, lead to the sense of success without actually there being success from a client's perspective.
Okay. So, folks, I'm going to ask you both a question now. So, if at all there was something to disrupt and innovate now for startups, could you give me 2 or 3 things that they can start working today in today's environment and build over the next 15, 24 months? What is there to be disrupted back?
Yeah, I mean, I can take this on from my perspective. I think you can disrupt anything you're doing, provided you have an angle. Just try to solve a problem with scale. So, like I said, people in the real estate industry are battling at the moment, and you will find that if you're a digital player in a real estate industry, it will start to work, right? So the question is what's the problem that you're solving, and how can you do it with scale? That's really the need of the hour, right? And that's where the opportunity is.
Okay.
So you take any industry and you can disrupt it today using technology.
I mean, this is a large topic, but go ahead, Saurabh. Go ahead, finish.
No, I was just saying that if you look at China and you see, the whole concept of first party data, right? Guess what happened in China, right? There is the big communication players are not the networks, but people who are called trade partners, right? Now, what are trade partners? They're basically the logistic companies, right? So today you have Amazon and the Flipkarts of the world, right, Naveen? And, guess what? A brand like L'Oreal today does not have its own e-commerce platform, right? They don't have a warehouse, right? So these warehouse companies, right, started off by saying, listen, I will transport your stuff to a home, right, in China. And then they said, listen, guess what? I will build your e-commerce platform. And then they said, I will actually communicate to this consumer. And they are sitting on more first party data than many of the global platforms today, right? And they're a real power they're real powered by themselves. So I think the question really is, I mean, do you want to be in the logistics business, or do you want to be in the data business, right? And that's really the question, right? Where is the real value in today's day and age? It's not in logistics. It's actually being in the data business, right? So to me, you have to basically understand some of these big global themes, and then find a way for you to create value in whatever you are doing, right? And that's where I think the end game will get played.
Great insight on data. Biren, yourself?
I would just say that I'll come back to my theme of where value lies, and I think value lies in design. And if you look at the media and entertainment industry, I would ask you to, go and see the front end of 6 major television channels. Lots of stuff happening in, right? Not way. If you look at the art direction of, you pick up 20 movies randomly across the whole country, across all regions. You talk about any of these. I think, first of all, the whole digital area on design can, I have a friend who 30 years back was a typeface specialist. There's a word for it, I can't remember now. And he changed the way A was written in the London Times. And he did the redesigning of the Economist. You remember that Economist went through a very major change in the way it looked at some point of time. But these things play a major role. And I think as we come into the more developed economy, the presentation of what we do, I mean, Apple, everyone knows the famous story, it's led by design, right? People would want to take prototypes to Steve Jobs because they wanted to know what kind of stuff he liked to look at. Then they would make it shiny and take it in that phase. I think the way companies, and this is an offshoot of what Saurabh does and did. Most companies have really poor communication design. They communicate, but they don't design their communication. And I think there, the world of technology can create options that they don't even need to meet each other. They can just do that. I think just by extension, brand ambassadors, right? Brand ambassadors can be disrupted. The way you have a brand ambassador can be disrupted. You can create a digital avatar that can be the brand ambassador at a much lower cost, and they can spend the money amping the hell out of what the brand ambassador does, rather than spend all the money giving it to the brand ambassador as one offbeat idea. But I think everything that I would look at is about taking the content creation, especially in the age of video, to the next level. You recall how signs used to be there on the top of shops going back only 30 years. And you will see that the way a shop presents itself today, 30 years later, is very different. And I think that's the kind of change that we're looking at across all facets of how people present themselves, using outdoor, using material, and stuff like that. And I think also in the age of mobile, right? How I can break through a clutter. I don't remember now exactly how many apps I've bought because I like photography and playing with stuff. And all. I've bought 7, 8 apps. They're all haphazard. My phone's got. So there are ways by which I think we can make sure that we create things that fit consumers, that fit enterprises. Everything that happens in the conventional fashion today. Even if you look at a newspaper today, there's still a lot of matrimonial ads, right? There must be a better way. I mean, if you're talking about the fact that there's video, why are people paying all that money in the Times of India or the Hindu or whichever newspaper in doing that? So I think all of these areas that you see are conventional media. There is a simpler, faster, better, quicker, cheaper way of doing it. That if you bring the aesthetic layer into it, then I want to be, if I'm the person who wants to put the matrimonial ad for my kid, I want to be where the aesthetic is the best and the reach is the best. So I think those kind of platforms, and matrimonial sites are not a new story. I mean, they've been there for 20 years, but they don't finish that. Today the biggest show on Netflix in English today happens to be an Indian matrimonial show, right? So you can see that there are some themes that are constantly ready to get disrupted, and it's all about storytelling in a new way. So I think the local the village square, needs to be reinvented.
Very true.
And maybe there's a way to create entertainment using panchayats as your distribution, right? Every panchayat meeting place can become a place of it become the new cinema, right? Or I don't know, the new entertainment hub. You can figure out how they can do their things in different ways. I don't know. It can be a lot of different stuff.
So I think let's close up with last parting comments and thoughts from both of you. What is your advice for startups now, especially in the media and entertainment industry? And secondly, if they were to get in touch with you folks, how would they do it? I'm getting a lot of private messages where people are asking, how do I get in touch with Biren? How do I get in touch with Saurabh? I think they all passionately want to kind of grow and scale up their companies. And they also need a lot of mentoring and handholding from you folks. So parting thoughts and advice.
Who are you asking?
Either of you, whoever.
Okay, I went to a school run by Jesuit priests, and we had to sing hymns and we had to say a morning prayer. So we learned, it was not religious so much as kind of getting you to be mindful. I think that's valuable no matter which place you go and say it. So I'll end with something that is called a Serenity Prayer. Okay. And the Serenity Prayer is ideal for entrepreneurs. And the Serenity Prayer goes like this. God grant me the courage to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, it's a very simple prayer. Okay, now this is a great prayer in terms of understanding startups or any business that we want to build and scale. Because if you are don't try and change the things you cannot change. Each person on this call knows what he or she can have the courage to change. You don't know it, Saurabh doesn't know it, and I don't know it. But they know the things that they think they have the courage to change. That's the starting point. Okay, because it suits them and their idea. And that, I think, is the greatest advice that I can give. Because when you have the courage to think about what you can change, the subset of the problems become clearer to you. And once a subset of the problems become clearer to you, you know what you need to do using technology or people or solutions or whatever to do it. So, it's not about my chucking a whole lot of ideas and people on this call think, hey, this is a great idea, Biren's call, I'm going to do it. Is it you have the courage to risk everything and be the guy with the revolutionary, with the wild spirit to be able to do that and see it through no matter what, right? But no matter which crisis, which pandemic, whatever, you got to see it through. And if you can see it with that clarity and you can explain it with that clarity, you have a better chance of someone backing you, funding you, growing you. Because if they can see what you can see, then half your battle is done. So I'd like to end with that Serenity Prayer.
Thank you, Biren. Saurabh, your thoughts, parting advice for startups?
Yeah, I live my life by three very simple principles, right? One of them is, and I'm in the startup mode, just like everybody else. One of them is, find the big problem, right? Not the solution, but find the big problem. The bigger the problem, the bigger the solution. So to me, the hunt for the big problem is actually more interesting than finding a big solution. The inherent solution already lies in the identification of a big problem. The second thing I keep saying is that, plans are nothing. Planning is everything. And what I really mean by that, it's a continuous process filled with many failures and tons of grit, right? So, keep planning. I mean, be in the journey, right? And the third thing I keep saying is, and it's like for me, I live my life by, there's a wonderful quote which says, I would not give a fig to simplicity this side of complexity, but I would give my life to simplicity the other side of complexity. And what that really means is you have to chase the complexity and then reduce everything you do to something very simple. If you're able to do that, magic will happen. If you leave it at complexity, so if simple leads to simplicity, it's actually just garbage in, garbage out. If you chase the complexity and you leave it at complexity, right, chances are it'll become too unwieldy for people to embrace what you've thought through. If you chase the complexity and you reduce it to simplicity, that's where, all the money, all the funding, right, the scale of technology, everything all resides in. So, after the complexity, find the simplicity. And that's it from me.
Very well said, Saurabh. That's really great. So thank you both. You both have been iconic as always. Yeah, thank you both. You both have been iconic as always. Please do give a thought on the school of entrepreneurship for movie making and the industry as such. Let's change that. And we will catch you soon again, maybe in a month or two again on a different topic. But I think the parting words are really, really remarkable. And I think they will be something that I'll personally take back from both of you. And thank you, folks. And thank you all for joining us today. We had a great session. I'm sure I must run into most of your times right now.
Thanks, it's been fun. And safe travels back to Mumbai. We'll catch you soon. Good to see you. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Look forward to it. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Thank you all for coming here.